You're welcome to Educare Magazine. Today we are looking at the impact of boarding house administration on student learning outcome or performance. And once again this day we are here with Nancy Ekpezu. Nancy, you're welcome again. You've been my guest some time ago, and I'm glad to have you back. Please, can you tell our audience who you are, what you do, and why you are so important to this program?
Thank you so much, Dr. Orie Vann. Thank you for having me again. I must say it's always a pleasure to be on this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Nancy Ekpezu, and I'm the lead consultant at Pezu Smith Consulting. My organization works with schools and other organizations to help them put their admin and management in place. In other words, when you work with us, we help you to get your processes, your structure, and all of that together. We recruit as well, and we also have books on education and management and administration that we sell.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and straight away we are going to look at this topic with Nancy, and then I'm sure that viewers, by the time we end this program, you will go back to your schools, for those who have schools, and implement. Nancy, let's start by asking, what does boarding house administration actually entail?
Well, I would say that it has to do with all the tasks and responsibilities involved in ensuring that students who are under your custody, who stay in the boarding house, are comfortable and that things move on well. That would include facilities management, the recruitment, reporting system, the performance management, everything basically, pastoral care, everything that has to do with ensuring that the boarding house functions properly on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so having said that, what can be the roles or responsibilities, if you want to call it job description, of a boarding house mistress or administrator?
There's a lot involved with that, and I must say that my organization does a lot of recruitment for boarding house staff. And one of the things I have found that is a lot of people do not even know what their roles is. Some schools just employ people and say, well, I know you're a dad, you're a father, please take care of the children. There is a need to have clearly defined job descriptions for the boarding house staff. And their descriptions, the job descriptions would include pastoral care, ensuring that the children's well-being is actually taken care of. Some of them have, issues when they leave home, that attachment, especially now that parents send their kids out so young, at such a young age. You'd be surprised to know there are kids of 9 years in the boarding house in secondary schools, even though we do not like to talk about it, but it's happening, or we do talk about it actually. Sure. And so they need to be able to understand these children, their psychology, and be able to mold them. They're like parents out of the biological home, so basically all of the parenting functions that occur in a home take place in the boarding house, and even more supervision of the kids, being their cheerleader and ensuring that they're happy, discovering their gifts, correcting them, discipline, and ensuring that they are really rounded academically, socially, mentally, psychologically, in every way that we need children to develop. And also ensuring their well-being in terms of the facilities, are there complaints, maybe with things there, resolving conflicts amongst them, and basically safeguarding these children and making sure they are safe.
Now, in your own view, how many administrators, boarding house administrators, should a school have? Does it depend on the number of students, or there's an administrator, and there are, in those days we used to have house masters and house mistresses? Is there room for one administrator and then the house masters and house mistresses, or are they now all administrators? And what is the ideal number for a particular number of students in a school?
Okay, ideally, parents have just 1 or 2 kids to take care of, 3, 4 maximum. But in a boarding school, in a boarding house, one boarding house parent can be in charge of as many as 50 children. But depending on the number, please do not saddle one boarding house staff the responsibility of taking care of an entire hostel of 150 children, 200, 300. That would not be doable. They would not be effective at all. There's always a need to have a proper staff-student ratio, and I think that having about 30-40 people under one person's supervision makes some sense. I know we have to look at the economy as well. It's not that easy because there are lots of expenses involved in running a boarding house apart from paying the staff their salaries. But you know, it's really unreasonable to have one boarding house parent doing 200 students. The supervision will definitely be poor, and there's no way they are going to study and know each of those children and their peculiarities and be able to meet their needs. So the larger the school, the more the number of boarding house staff that you need. And usually there is they should report to a boarding house, a head of boarding house, if it's a big school. And if it's not, and it maybe it's a co-educational school where you have the males and you have the females, there should be someone in charge of the males and someone in charge of the females. And all of them, all the boarding house staff should have someone that they report to who is like their direct line manager and who also reports in turn to the school administrator.
Okay, all right. So let's look at critically the importance of effective administration. Why is effective administration critical for the smooth operation of a boarding house? Why is it critical?
It's critical in every aspect of the school, not just the boarding house, but particularly in the boarding house, because a lot is at stake when there's poor administration. You're all aware of schools that have been in the news for one thing or the other, and if you study well, some could have been cases that would have been prevented if there were proper procedures and policies in place that were not only on paper but adhered to. And so if you do not have proper administration, it's going to start showing, the gaps will start showing. And if they show, the students will be unhappy. If they are not properly supervised and children are always breaking their head or at the playground or fighting, or there's a lot of bullying, or maybe there's poor catering and nobody's really the oversight over the caterers is not effective, then there will be a problem. Ultimately, your students are your best marketers, the people who have experienced your services in the boarding house. And if they're not happy with you, who else is going to toot your horn for you? So if they're going to talk about it to their parents, who in turn will tell their friends, and before you know it, there's a network of negative marketers demarketing your school and telling everybody all the ills going on there. I recall a school where I was an administrator once, and the children reported to me that they saw a fly in their soup. Well, I had to have a meeting with the caterer because we had rules, you know, for them to cover their hair, and then the next thing they found hair in their bar.
Wow.
After that, I said, well, who knows, we might find a whole cockroach in the soup. So before we start finding different animals, Madam Caterer, we will have to review this contract because we didn't employ you to serve, we employed you to serve them beef. All of these extras that you're bringing were not part of the contract. So please, you might need to leave so that we have peace, because these children are going to tell their parents and they're not going to be happy. If the feeding is poor, you can be sure that the children will not be happy. No parent wants to send their kids to school looking healthy and plump and happy and going back home with long necks, looking scrawny and unkempt just because they were not fed well or because of poor administration that would not even allow them to check how they are doing, like their grooming and all of that. So boarding house administration is very, very important. With poor administration, you can experience all kinds of accidents and incidences and incidents in the boarding house, and even deaths. We've had cases of deaths even in Nigeria, which we are not proud of. And if you look carefully, a lot had to do with that. And with proper administration, there's communication between the school and also the parents. And a gap in communication can mean a lot. It can mean you're telling the parents everything is fine and they're assuming everything is fine. I'll give you an example. There was a school I got to know about. You know, I run a Facebook group with lots of people there, Educational Administration Network. And we have boarding schools that are members. apart from the day schools. And you know, someone reached out to me once in box and said, Miss Nancy, a scorpion bit a child in my school in the boarding house. What should we do? And I said, what are your policies? I got to know they had no policies for reporting any incident that happened, and sometimes they will hide from the parents. And I said, what if that child was poisoned and died? You have to be transparent. And first, what even happened? You need to do a check. What happened? Was it poor lighting? Because if the child saw there was a scorpion in the bathroom,
or bushes,
exactly, several factors. I had to ask all of the factors. Have you done a risk assessment of your boarding house? You need to do that regularly. It's part of boarding house administration. What can happen? Are there bushes around? If there are bushes around, it means snakes can come in. There might be scorpions. It could be anything. How often do you clear those places? Do you fumigate? Do you do this? I had to ask questions. And then now, was there proper lighting in the bathroom? Because if there was, this child would have seen the scorpion.
Yeah, exactly.
So he said, you know, the child went out very early in the morning before others wanted to have a bath before others come. He was always feeling ashamed of people looking at his body, and here he got bitten by a scorpion. You know, and I said the proper thing is to do a proper report to the parents. They need to know what has happened to their child. When parents bring their child to your school, they are bringing their most prized possession.
Exactly.
And you have to treat that child that way. And if a scorpion bites a child and you want to sweep it under the carpet, I mean, it's a no-no for me. And so I had to work with them on the procedures and what to do, you know, to handle such emergencies and odd situations, and how to even prevent them, most importantly. These are all parts of administration. You have to care about the safety of the children. You have to care about their feeding. You have to care about their personal grooming. You have to care about their morals. I got to hear a very sad story, and this is I'm even ashamed to mention it, about kids who were actually making it out in the chapel. And they were taking turns to sleep with one another in the school chapel. Because this kid to the chapel was committed to a student who was the prefect, the chapel prefect. And, you know, innocent teenagers, they had amongst themselves, they decided that, you know, someone could at least be going in there with his girlfriend or girlfriend, until something really ugly happened and the lid was blown off. You know, and the school was there. They didn't even know what was going on. That's what poor supervision can do, you know. Because I don't know how you do not have head counts at certain times of the day. You should have head counts regularly.
But I think there's a lot of laxity in terms of
boarding supervision.
Generally, supervision. I had also a terrible, I'm not going to share it, but it was a terrible experience. We went to this school and we had ugly news of it's ugly.
Very ugly, ugly situations.
I was asking the house mistress, the senior house mistress. I asked her, I said, why we were in school? Even when there was lights out, 30 minutes after lights out, the teacher on duty will stroll in unannounced to all the dormitories.
Absolutely.
They will go to all the classrooms to ensure that nobody is left in the classroom. Everybody is in the dormitory, everybody is sleeping and all that. So what has happened? What has changed? That as a senior house mistress, under your care, under your supervision, these students leave hostels at night and go to the classrooms and pick the junior ones to do the unspeakable. And I told her, Ma, if your child was in this school, will you be sleeping? I asked her, and she was looking at me. I said, but that is sheer wickedness, because you know what to do and you are simply not doing it because you don't care. And I asked her, I said, in your own days, like in my days, it was taking care of students was the most important thing for teachers, for house mistresses, for everybody.
It was priority.
It was topmost priority for school management and others. So what has happened? What has changed? So you see that most of these schools, they don't even care. And it baffles me. These people are parents. They are not young girls who are managing. They are parents, you know. So it's a very big issue. Like you just mentioned, there are no policies, there are no procedures, nothing, and then parents also, they don't even ask questions when they bring their students. Please, if I take my child to a school, I ask for the policy. What are the rules? of being in boarding house and all that. But parents don't even take time to do all they know. They want to dump their children there and go back home and continue with their businesses. I pray that God is going to help us in this area. Let's look at safety. You mentioned a little bit of that, safety and security issues here. How do you address safety concerns in schools, such as maybe fire outbreak, emergency procedures in the boarding house? We were in school. We were asked not to use all these boilers, those days boilers, and then
candles.
Then one girl one day, she was actually my class, and there was this fire outbreak. It was lights out, everybody had slept, and she sneakily plugged the boiler and water. Then she slept off.
Wow.
And the plastic got melted, and there was this fire outbreak.
Wow.
There was big alarm. So what do you think, or how do you address such concerns? And remember that I said even in those days we had close monitoring of these people on us. Not to talk of now that we don't even have such. So what are your concerns on that?
Okay, first, every boarding house must have safety policies and procedures, and one of them includes,
and they must be communicated
and properly communicated to parents, to the students, to all the staff,
and then put them in strategic places where
exactly. And then you should have during the onboarding or orientation of both the boarding house parents and the students, and even parents, biological parents or guardians. All of these things must be taught to everybody, must be properly communicated. And also, maybe you have a handbook that contains all of these things. But basically, every school must have, you need to check the items that children bring in for their safety.
Thank you.
No candles, no boilers, no pen knives.
Razors.
Some schools even forbid sprays because you can spray to another. Some kids are very naughty. You also have items that are not permitted. Maybe we call them contraband items. Canned foods and the likes of them. So no cooking is allowed. So don't bring your gas, camping gas or anything. In addition, every staff must be trained to have regular fire drills. The entire team must have regular fire drills. I'll share a story of my last job as a school administrator. When I took over, and I saw a lot of gaps. I was even scared because I had never led a school where I just saw so many gaps in the boarding house. So immediately, I think a few weeks into my administration, I told everybody we were going to have a fire drill. And they said, no, Ms. Nancy, there's no need for that. I insisted. I got the muster point. I got a team to come and train, a safety team to come and train. Everybody had to try, with the fire extinguishers. They knew which one was for which. You would not believe what I'm going to say. 2 months later, we had a fire outbreak in the kitchen.
Wow.
And guess who put it out? Before they could even call any safety officials, the very team we had trained. They knew what to do. They knew how to use. You remember 2 months before, they didn't know the fire extinguishers were just there like decoration. They didn't even know how to use them. Before they even got to my office to alert me that there was a problem, my team had put the fire out, and I was so proud of them.
Wow.
But what if they didn't have a proactive administrator or a knowledgeable one who didn't know how to even train them and the things that should be in place? They knew what to do, and they said, if this gets out of hand, or this is the muster point, this is where we'll mark the kids. They just knew everything to do. So you must have regular fire drills in every school. Have the ones that you plan on your calendar, and have impromptu ones to see how they'll behave should there really be a fire. Have a muster point. All of these are things that must be in place. And in addition, you should not allow unauthorized visits to the boarding house. The boarding house deserves its privacy, and you do not want people knowing who are in the boarding house. And so visitors are not allowed unauthorized access to the boarding house. So even on visiting days when parents come, because they might come with relatives and all that, we have designated areas where we receive them. They are not allowed to mingle with every child and come in. They come for their kids. So contact with strangers is totally controlled.
Okay, so Nancy, we've been talking about safety and security issues. Now let's look at facilities and amenities and students' well-being. Okay, we're going to look at the facilities, the amenities that are available, and their well-being. What types of accommodation and facilities are typically offered in boarding houses that you know that contribute to the overall well-being and satisfaction of students' expectations?
Okay, first, every boarding house must have rooms, whether they are halls. You know, some schools have halls, actually, yes, what we call dormitories, and you have a whole lot of, you know, bunk beds on both sides, or some even in the middle. And everybody has it's just a common room where everybody stays, a common big room, a dormitory. Then we have the ones that are rooms, you know, more private, kind of, with 4 students. I went to a federal school, and we were 4 in my room, and I liked it. I wasn't a hall. You know, so depending on the fees and the facilities available, because you can't provide more than what the fees can accommodate, really. So it's always good. So some rooms you might have like 4 kids, some 8, and ensuite with the toilets and bathrooms, or you have, you know, bathrooms and toilets built outside of the halls. You know, those ones that are like big dormitories. And normally you should have a common room, because recreation is very important. It's not all about book work, academic work. The kids should have a place where they can relax, maybe a television in the common room, sports facilities, games, sometimes board games. In schools where I'm an administrator, I let the kids bring their board games, but we have designated times when they can play. Games like Monopoly and chess. Things that are basically educative and can help them bond and also socialize, you know. So, and then you also need internet facilities these days, with the way assignments and research and learning go these days. You need to be sure that they have access to internet, but which should be controlled, so that they don't get on the wrong websites.
Or is it that a time frame can be allotted?
Oh yes, we normally have times when they are allowed to bring out their laptops and work on.
After that,
yes, with adult supervision. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like that. And then of course games, you know, access to volleyball, basketball, football. Sometimes a coach to come and have physical activities with them. Boarding house should be exciting. You know, it's not all about bookwork. Because
some kind of parties.
Oh yes, remember the social nights in federal schools those days.
It was fun.
It was fun. I remember that last year we kept talking about it, and even we were even going and mimicking one another, having to dance at social nights. Those are memories you build from boarding schools. So a boarding school is not all about schoolwork. So those are facilities you build, and recreation as well.
In terms of amenities, in terms of water, light.
Oh, there has to be a good supply of water. Either you have a borehole or access to, if there's a government-funded water system, which is very poor in Nigeria now. Sorry, but that's how it is. So most schools have a borehole with big overhead tanks where they're sure that water comes in. And I just came back from a visit to Enugu where I had to inspect a boarding house for all of this. Those are the things we look out for. Is there good water? What about power? Because there must be power, and everywhere must be properly lit. You know, you deal with teenagers, and any dark corners you have in the school are very suggestive for rendezvous. You know what I mean? So make sure.
Thank you so much, Nancy. We've been talking on the impact of boarding house administration on students' learning outcome, and it's been very insightful. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue on other aspects on this topic. Stay tuned and don't go away. Thank you.
It's small tonic time.
Make great things happen with Malt Tonic.
Malt Tonic is enriched with vitamins and minerals for that rush of vitality you need to reach greatness.
It's Malt Tonic time.
Welcome back to Educare TV Magazine. Today we've been talking about impact of boarding house administration on students' learning outcome. With me has been Nancy Ekpezu. Nancy, we're going to look at student housing and academic reports now. We've been talking at the facilities, infrastructures, and all that, the administration and all that. We're going to look at how all this help to support academic. Okay, so how do boarding house often cater to students, and what role do they play in academic support?
Oh, a lot. Remember the old days of prep?
Afternoon and night prep. I remember, yeah, sure.
And sometimes even on weekends, like Saturdays, after inspection,
yeah.
It's still in place. It's one effective way to get students to do their homework, to do projects and read and research. Yeah, so prep, yes, is one of them, and that means you have to have conducive facilities for prep to happen. Okay. For people to just sit and be supervised, for the students to sit and be supervised by boarding house staff. In some schools, we also have teachers take turns on duty to go and work with them, so that if they have difficulties, let's say in mathematics or geography or physics, biology, there's a teacher on duty to give some extra support to them. And so yes, prep will only be effective when there is proper supervision. Exactly. So it's not enough to have it on the timetable and send kids there. Some school, I've heard some schools do that students just go and sit and do whatever they like. Yeah. They might as well be dropping love notes to one another, or just doing whatever they want. So until prep is not effective until there is proper supervision. And the supervision is not just you sitting there and watching. Because you might see a student carry a book, for example, and have a novel behind
does this. You want to be naughty, does this. So you do this. While you're reading, no, this is the book, and this is in the back of the book. There's mathematics or English, but you're reading something else here.
Okay, another thing is for the boarding house staff to know that they play the integral role that parents play, biological parents play, and that is to also check if they have done their work. Okay. So that means liaising with the teachers, the academic team. They don't work in isolation if there's going to be proper coordination. So they must work with the academic team to hear how the kids are doing. So during parent conferences, if the biological parents and guardians do not show up, you as a boarding house parent can walk in to represent the child. And you should not only wait for parent conferences, have times when you just walk up to them to know how the kids are doing in all of their subjects. Get feedback. What can you do to support? Is it to check their homework, to check their projects? Or sometimes you could even give them assignments. I recall in a school, I was very deliberate about who I recruited as a boarding house staff. And I ended up choosing a man who was not only good in academics. In fact, he has his doctorate degree now, as at that time he had a master's degree. And he could also speak French fluently. And so I chose him above others because this gave the kids a chance to speak a foreign language in the boarding house. Okay. And years later, I heard how that actually affected some of them positively. Yeah. Imagine you're visiting France and you knew that right when you were in school, you had a chance to speak French in the boarding house. Practice the French you were learning. Yeah. That was a plus. So you have to be very intentional when you employ boarding house parents. Okay. Gone are the days when you just needed a matron, this
matron, exactly. Mama Metsi.
From that level where you have matron and then it doesn't work for this set of children. There are too many tricks. There are too many things that have come up. Honestly. And the old tricks you knew then when you were Metsi and matron would not work because they would not even listen to you. Those days I remember matron would come. Everybody, leave us there. Go from program. We would go. All she needed to do was just carry a cane and chase us out of the room. And they were
usually very fast. I will not walk fast. And
they may be chasing kids who have smuggled phones in.
Exactly.
Who have done all sorts of things. They are exposed to far more than you can imagine. Yeah. And so we need people who are up to date, up to the trends of what's going on, who can speak their language, the 21st century, and get their attention, who'll be able to communicate with them, who'll be able to get their attention. That's how you will know if they're performing well in school or not.
Thank you, Nancy Ekpezu, for this time out with you. We'll be looking at impact of boarding house administration on students' learning outcomes, and we've actually exhausted that. At this point, I want to just ask you to just give an advice to administrators, those who are aspiring to be administrators.
Dear school owners and dear school administrators, dear owners of boarding houses, school owners of administrators, or anybody who works in a boarding house, please, when you're starting, the best time to get professional help is when you are about starting. The next best time is now. And don't wait until you are in the news before you start running all over the place to look for consultants to help you put a proper guideline for the operation of your boarding house. And to the school administrator, never stop learning. Look out for trends, research, find out how it is done, receive the right training. There's a training I do for boarding house administration, on boarding house administration periodically. I intend to do it every 3 months now. You should be able to subscribe to such training. No knowledge is wasted, and it will save you the pain of being in the news. And don't train just yourself. Make sure you train your team, because if you're the only knowledgeable one, there is a problem waiting to happen.
Thank you so much for watching. We have looked exhaustively on impacts of boarding house administration on student learning outcome with Nancy Ekpezu. Until we come your way next time, it's been Educare TV. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. And also we implore you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Educare Magazine.